The wind that drifts across the narrowest ribbon of Ocean Parkway on Long Island doesn't just move through the tall reeds and tangled brush.
It seems to whisper, as if it carries secrets buried beneath the soil, secrets that refuse to stay hidden forever. And on the surface,
This stretch of road looks like any other coastal highway in New York. Cars passing, the distant hum of life continuing as normal. But beneath that illusion lies one of the most chilling and complex serial killer investigations in modern American history.
a case that would come to be known as the Long Island Serial Killer, or LISK, a name that sounds almost detached, almost clinical.
Yet behind it exists a web of fear, unanswered questions, and a haunting sense that the truth has always been just one step out of reach. It all seemed to begin with a disappearance, but even that origin point is layered in confusion and mystery. Because in May 2010,
A young woman vanished after placing a distressed emergency call from a gated coastal community, her voice reflecting urgency and confusion.
telling the operator that someone was trying to kill her, her words fragmented, urgent, and then the call ended, abruptly, without resolution. Who was she running from? What did she see? And why did she disappear without a trace?
Her case might have faded into the long list of missing persons if not for what happened months later, when police returned to search the area for any sign of her.
Combing through the dense, unforgiving marshland along Ocean Parkway, an environment that seems almost designed to conceal. Thick with brush, uneven terrain, and long stretches where visibility drops to nothing. And it was during this search in December 2010 that everything changed.
When a K9 unit detected something hidden just off the road, something that would crack the case wide open, not Shannan Gilbert, but human remains.
And another, until 4 bodies were found within close proximity, forming a pattern too precise to ignore.
And these individuals would later be identified as 4 young women, each with their own story and life beyond the headlines.
4 young women whose lives had intersected in ways that only became clear after their deaths. All of them working as escorts, all of them advertising their services online, all of them disappearing years before their remains were found. And suddenly what had been a search
For one missing person transformed into the terrifying realization that a serial killer had been operating undetected, methodical and patient, hiding in plain sight.
The horror deepened in the months that followed, because as investigators expanded their search along the same desolate stretch of Parkway in early 2011, more remains were uncovered. But these discoveries complicated the narrative rather than clarifying it, because not all the victims fit the same pattern.
Some remains were partial, some belonged to individuals who had been missing for years, even decades, and among them were victims who did not match the profiles
Of the initial 4, including a male victim, an unidentified woman, and even the remains of a toddler, raising an unsettling possibility that this was not the work of a single killer, or that if it was, the killer's methods and victim selection had evolved over time in ways that defied simple categorization.
Investigators were now faced with a puzzle that seemed to grow more complex with each new piece, because the very landscape that had concealed the bodies
Also obscured the truth, the marshes and brush acting as both a hiding place and a barrier, making it difficult to determine timelines, causes of death, and connections between victims. And yet there was a pattern, something deliberate in the way the bodies had been placed along Ocean Parkway, as if the killer, or killers,
had chosen that location with a specific purpose, a place isolated enough to avoid detection, yet accessible enough to revisit without drawing attention.
One of the most notable aspects of the case emerged through the behavior of the person involved, particularly in connection to one of the individuals, whose family received a series of disturbing phone calls after her disappearance, calls that were brief, controlled, and deeply unsettling.
Where the caller reportedly taunted her loved ones, revealing details that only the killer could know, speaking with a calmness that suggested confidence, even enjoyment.
Before ending the call and disappearing again, each time using a burner phone that left little trace. And what made it even more unnerving was that these calls were traced to busy areas of New York City, crowded places where the caller could blend into the chaos of everyday life.
Suggesting that the person responsible was not hiding in isolation, but moving freely among the public, unnoticed, invisible.
As the investigation unfolded, it became clear that this was not just a case defined by its crimes, but by its complications. Because internal issues within law enforcement began to surface, including leadership conflicts, allegations of misconduct, and a lack of coordination between agencies.
All of which slowed progress and created gaps where crucial opportunities may have been lost. And for the families of the victims,
The sense that time was slipping away, that answers were being delayed, that the person responsible was continuing to live their life while they were left with only questions. The geography of Long Island itself played a significant role in the mystery, because the South Shore presents a unique combination
pensatrias of densely populated communities and isolated natural areas. where miles of marshland stretch alongside highways.
And the killer seemed to understand this environment intimately, choosing disposal sites that took advantage of these conditions, locations that could remain undisturbed for years, where the natural landscape would do much of the work in concealing evidence.
And this familiarity led investigators to consider that the suspect might have local ties, someone who lived or worked in the area, someone who knew the rhythms of the parkway.
The patterns of traffic, the times when the road would be quiet enough to act without interruption. Over the years, numerous suspects were considered, each bringing a new wave of attention and speculation, but none leading to a definitive conclusion, and this constant cycle of hope and disappointment
Only added to the tension surrounding the case, because with each new lead came the possibility that the mystery might finally be solved, only for that possibility to fade.
as evidence fell short, leaving investigators to return to the beginning, to re-examine what they thought they knew, to question assumptions, to look again at the details that might have been overlooked. Advances in technology would eventually provide new tools for the investigation, particularly in the areas of DNA analysis and digital tracking.
Allowing investigators to revisit evidence that had once been inconclusive, to extract new information from old samples, and to combine that with data from cell phone records.
Online activity and geographic profiling, slowly building a clearer picture of the killer's movements and methods. But even with these advancements, the case remained stubbornly resistant to resolution, because the person responsible had taken steps to minimize their digital footprint,
Using disposable phones, avoiding patterns that could be easily tracked, and maintaining a level of control that made them difficult to identify.
One of the most persistent questions in the case is whether all the victims are connected to a single individual. Because while the Gilgo Four share clear similarities, the additional remains found along Ocean Parkway introduce variables that complicate the narrative, suggesting that there may have been more than one killer.
Or that the killer's behavior changed over time. And this ambiguity creates challenges not only for investigators but for the broader understanding of the case.
Because without a clear framework, it becomes difficult to establish motive, to build a profile, to anticipate behavior. Beyond the investigation itself, the case has come to represent larger issues within society, particularly the ways in which certain victims are marginalized.
How individuals involved in sex work are often overlooked or not taken as seriously when they go missing, and how this lack of attention can create opportunities
For such individuals to operate without detection. And in this sense, the case is not just about one person or a single series of events, about systemic failures, about the gaps that exist in how cases are handled, about the importance of recognizing every victim as worthy of attention and justice.
As the years have passed, the case has remained in the public eye, resurfacing with each new development, each announcement from law enforcement.
And in recent years, renewed efforts by a dedicated task force have brought fresh momentum to the investigation, re-examining evidence, identifying new persons of interest, and applying modern techniques to old data, signaling that the case is far from cold, that there is still movement, still progress, still hope that the truth will eventually be uncovered.
And yet, despite all of this, the central mystery remains, the identity of the killer still unknown.
And this unresolved tension is what makes the case so enduring, so haunting, because it exists in that space between what is known and what is hidden, where every answer seems to lead to more questions, where every discovery reveals another layer of complexity.
For a moment, the person at the center of it all, not as some distant figure removed from society, but as someone who exists within it, who walks the same streets,
Drives the same roads, interacts with others in ways that seem entirely ordinary, and yet carries with them the knowledge of what they have done, the awareness of what lies buried along that quiet stretch of highway. And that is perhaps the most unsettling aspect of the Long Island serial killer case.
Not just the crimes themselves, but the idea that the person responsible could be so close, so integrated into everyday life, that they could remain hidden for so long.
The wind still moves across Ocean Parkway, the traffic still passes, life continues as it always has, waiting, persistent, unresolved, and until those questions are answered, until the truth is fully brought to light, the story of the Long Island serial killer will continue to linger.
Sisters leapt, a shadow cast over the landscape, a reminder that some mysteries do not fade with time, they deepen.
Because somewhere within that silence, within that stretch of road where the past refuses to stay buried, the truth is still there, waiting to be found. The morning of January 24, 2006 began like any other for Jennifer Kesey, a 24-year-old finance manager living in Orlando, Florida. The morning of January 24, 2006 began like any other for Jennifer Kesey, a 24-year-old finance manager living in Orlando, Florida.